everybody, and welcome to Real Life with Commissioner Johnson and Dr. T. I got a great guy on here. I call him Sulaiman for short. We're going to just get into it. I just welcome you all. Thank you for being a part. The listeners, we're getting great reviews from the folks who are tuning in. Please share it with people. This Spotify, we're on Spotify. Of course, we're doing YouTube. We want to make sure that we're connecting with the people who have been with us the most and then help you to be at a higher level, because every year you should be thriving to be better than you was the day before. And that's what this broadcast and what we're trying to do on our podcast is all about. How you doing, good sir?
I'm well, my brother. Thank you. Peace and love. Glad to be here, and thanks for the invite.
Well, I'm just glad to have a person like you, and I want people, before we start, can you give them a little bit about yourself, your background, because this man, what you about to go into, everybody, to get you ready, you about to experience. I'm talking about the Mount Rushmore or Kilimanjaro of knowledge, of insight, and things you want to do. But share with our podcast audience about who you are.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner. It's been a long time since you and I connected, and it's really nice to reconnect with you and be invited to be on the show. I'm honored to be a part of the podcast.
Thank you.
Let me say, I have spent, I would say, I see myself as an educator, a counselor, a therapist. Okay, I've spent my primary education was in the field of clinical psychology, and I have spent over 40 years working with men, directly with men, and that's a lot about working with myself, Larry. I mean, paying attention to how we move through the world and how we have been socialized and trained and educated to be in this world. And during that time, a lot of my focus has been on educating men and teaching men about how we can be in relationships or be connected with others and not have to use abusive or aggressive behavior. A lot of that work, you may recall, was done with an organization called Men Stopping Violence, which was a national, international organization that focused on ending male violence against women and girls. Primarily located in DeKalb County. For over 40 years, we did the work in that county. And recently, we are no longer in existence because of challenges that the organization was having. However, today I continue to practice the work in terms of working with men. I have 3 support groups that I co-facilitate called the Clearing that we run. I also have a primary practice with the wife in my life. Myra and I do a work with couples. We work with couples, teaching and educating couples how to be in relationships and navigate through moments of challenge, moments of uncertainty, moments of difficulty, growth moments, okay? And as we navigate, teaching them, giving them skills, tools that they can use to help them move through that level of their relationships. So those are 2 things that I do in my life that God has given me a passion for, and I really enjoy doing. So that's a little bit about me. I'm born in a little small country, Town, in the South, and presently working, just enjoying myself in the work that we do.
I'm just glad. I wanted the people, the real life audience, to hear that, because your life work, you don't only have the education part, but you also have the street part. That's the part that attracted me to you, because I'm from the streets, and I just so happen to matriculate through all of these wonderful universities and get these various degrees. But the way I got there is you had to have a certain level of street education and how we do things. And I just like to make sure our people and the people in our audience that you get it both sides. You want the grassroots and the grass tops. And what I've seen in you is that you know how to bring both of those together, and you help to create a better man and where we want to go. And that's where I want to start with this whole conversation is the conditions of a man. What is some of the things that and we're 5 years out of COVID. We are we are quarter into this century. We're 25 years in. Is there new evolutions or new things out that the aha experiences about a man? Because it's in my destiny and where I've been, uh, I've seen transformation just as a becoming a man. What are some of the things you see?
Well, it's a great question. And what I'm hearing you ask is over the time and where we are today, what are some of the experiences that we as men are having in the transition of time?
Yes.
Where we are located right now in the century, coming out of COVID, and all those kinds of things. And I tell you what I've learned about myself and others over the years, Larry, is that we have been socialized, trained, educated, taught to be good soldiers.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is that there's a whole part of us that has been denied, and
Mm.
that is our ability to be emotionally equipped to open and share. We spend so much time protecting and guarding ourselves based on an idea of masculinity that we have that has not served us very well. And
Wow.
and what I mean by that is that there's a large part of ourselves that we hide, that we keep hidden out of fear, out of anxiety, out of uncertainty of how I might be perceived by
Right.
others. And
Right.
so I am constantly in a position of defending myself, if you will.
Right.
Part of that defending myself has to do with staying silent. At least I can talk sport and play because that's
Right.
what we do. We talk sport and play. But when it
Right. The
comes to
barbershop
being
talk.
real,
Yeah, that's right. I'm listening.
I'm just saying that when it comes to us being real and talking about things like our hurt, our pain, our fear, our anxiety, our uncertainty, our inadequacies, we don't do that.
Right.
And
Right.
yet we as men have those feelings. We have those things going on within us, but we stuff them and they
Mm.
hide. And I've come to believe that it's part of the root cause of a lot of dis-ease that we experience as men as we move through age because of the way we don't allow ourselves to experience our full humanity, if you will.
Wow. That male talk about the male conditioning because people don't understand it's a socialization.
Yes.
It's something that you instilled in you at birth, and then you grow up that way. And then when you experience what I call, use one of the big words on the cognitive dissonance, that means you see you see it in a different light in terms of where we are. And what is some of that conditioning like?
Well, you're right. It has a history. It's a
Right.
tradition. It's a generational thing. And I mean, we can go all the way, go back to slavery with it, Larry, if we wanted to, okay? Because
Okay.
there's so much of the concepts of masculinity that we learn historically that still inform how we act today.
Wow.
Okay. And a lot of us will say that, I'm not impacted by slavery. That happened a long time ago. It doesn't happen. And I don't believe, I think it's rooted in the DNA, if you will. Okay. And we're still growing out of that. And
Hmm.
it takes a lot of risk because we were taught. I mean, I just using myself, for example, I recall times when um, I would cry and my father would say, "What you crying about, boy?" And I would
Right.
suck up tears,
Right.
to not show those feelings. I remember
Right.
called times I would fall and hurt myself. Get up, boy, that don't hurt. And I'm
Mm.
bleeding. And I'm realizing that I can't show pain. I can't
Right.
show fear. And so we grow up with this thing and we feel that that's what we have to do. And so part of the socialization that we get in the very home that we grow up in, and I don't think it's just by fathers. I think mothers also instill this in us.
Right.
That we have to be strong. Even though I will say that it's through the mothers that we learn our connection with women in terms of our meeting our emotional needs. Because with mom, I could cry. Mom
Right.
would hold me. Mom would cuddle me. Mom would hold me. But dad, it was a no. I had to be different around dad.
Right.
So I think that also has a lot to do with how we show up in relationships too. And I can say more about that later. However, I believe that conditioning did start very early. And we learned a lot from not only that, watching our father. I mean, I could tell you, I don't recall a time my father was sick until he
Mm.
got ill with cancer. I know he
Wow.
left the home every morning. He went to work at 5 o'clock in the morning. He'd come home at 5 o'clock in the evening. And he did that, you know. So we got a lot of messages about what it was to be a man, to be a provider, to be a protector, to be powerful, to procreate, and to be, you know, potent. We learned those 5 P's from our fathers and from other men, you
Wow.
know, and we acted out on those things. So that's a
Right.
lot about the socialization that came up for us.
Talk about the part you see the male in the household. Talk about if you've grown up in a single family, female headed house,
Yeah.
and talk about the socialization, the conditioning, and then of course I'm gonna move to relationships after this. But you
Well,
got me peaked right now.
I think that's an important piece because we have to also understand that women have been socialized under the same system.
Okay.
Okay, so
Mhm.
women also got the message that men were supposed to be all of this. You
Okay.
know, you'd be surprised at the number of times that I would be speaking to an audience or something, and I would talk, and I'd pause for a moment, and I'd ask women, "How many of you in the audience are ready for a man who's in touch with his full emotional side, with his
Wow.
full humanity?" You know,
Right.
and for some men, it's being in a relationship is the scariest place you'll ever be,
Wow.
because that you have more issues with the person you love the most, Larry, than with
Mm-hmm.
anyone else in the world. And you know
Hmm.
that person loves you. You know it.
Right. Right.
At
Right.
the
That
same
vulnerability.
time, I found myself defending myself against a person I love more than anyone else. And it has a lot to do with the fear of being vulnerable.
Hmm.
You know, so growing up in a household with just mom, there's also the challenge that we have of what mom has learned about what it is to be a man. And because she's attempting to carry on the role of both the male and the female, it's a challenging time for her.
Hmm.
You know, and when she sees her sons maybe showing more emotion than they should, they also find ways of shutting it down.
Wow.
You see, and it's
Yes.
hard, and that's why, and you know, my heart goes out to single mothers.
Right.
You know, and
Right.
that's why whenever I'm talking to one, I'm saying to her, "Where's your community? Where's your community? Is it in the church? Is it in the school system? Where is that community that you have so that your child is interacting with males? That
Hmm.
they're having that contact, you know? Where's the boys club, the organizations, the Boy Scouts, the places where young men can get some energy in addition to what they're getting from mom?"
Wow.
Okay?
Right.
So that's a little of what comes up for me.
But thinking now, you got me thinking because I know when we say single parent, we always say female. Talk about it from a single father, a single male perspective.
Okay, and that's
For
a
sure.
whole nother trip because
Right.
they are all we see is what dad gives us, and dad is this, you know, no nonsense, you know, no, you know, this whole thing that you've got to be quote unquote strong, whatever that means, you
Right.
know, and figuring that out. And what we see is that, you know, not all the time do we get the emotional connection. You'd be
Hmm.
surprised at the number of adult people that when I talk with them and I ask them, growing up, did you experience mom and dad affectionate with each other? And you'd be surprised the number that says, no, I never saw them hug. I never saw them kiss. I never saw them holding hands. I never experienced that. And then I
Hmm.
said, well, what about as children? Did you receive that from mom or dad? Well, mom was the affectionate one. Dad was not. You
Okay.
know, so you get it. There's that relationship that they have, but for the most part, with fathers, you don't necessarily find that level of emotional connection with the children.
Wow.
That needs to be there, and
Hmm.
it just shows up in a different way.
Is there steps that a man can take to basically change this mindset, to recondition himself? Is that, they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Is it ways to change if
Well,
you've been brought up a certain way?
right. I've heard that cliche too about you can't teach an old dog new trick. I'm not a believer of that. Okay,
Good. All
I
right.
believe that when we can create safe spaces for men to
Okay.
open up and share, there's a lot of weight that we carry that we want to get rid of.
Hmm.
It's the fear, though, Larry. It's the fear of sharing that gets in the way of it. And
Right.
I know from the work that I do and my partner and I do, the work we did at MSV, that when we have a place where we can bring men together and let them see that it's okay to show your vulnerability, it's okay to drop away from pride and
Hmm.
allow yourself to show up, men will experience something totally different. Because for the first time, they're able to take off, if you will, the shackles of masculinity
Hmm.
and begin to show their full humanity. And sometimes that's opening up and crying and
Right.
sharing their tears. And I'm an advocate of a man crying. Don't reach for the tissues. Let him cry.
Right. Let them out. Let it out.
Let it out.
Let
You
it
see,
out.
because we've been holding it so long, Larry.
Right.
And how do we begin to embrace those moments and not
Hmm.
see them as less than, but see them as a sign of strength?
That's right. Wow. And that's so key. And I like to make sure we talk about, and you touched on socialization, reconditioning, on those relationships. Now I want to, I'm sorry, just the male portion, but now I want to talk about the relationships of a man in terms of brother to brother, male to female, uh, brother to child. How do you how should a man go about building relationships, and then just talk about relationships period in your community,
Yeah,
because it's
yeah,
just such a need right now. People are you've been doing this for years, and we've always been talking about male teachers, having more male teachers, having more male role models, and like the clarion call is even louder now, but it's like we're still waiting for that to happen. So
yeah.
how do society look at building relationships with a man, and how does a man look at those three pieces on building relationships? If that's, and I know you're gonna put it in your own words, but I'm trying to break it down.
But it's a lot. It's a lot in that what you're
Right.
asking, and building relationships. I've I learned that the first relationship I've got to have is with myself.
Okay, that's key.
Okay,
With yourself.
I gotta figure out who Sulaiman is, and having
Okay.
that relationship with Sulaiman. And I'm not minimizing the relationship I need to have, quote unquote, with God. Okay,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
that's a
yeah.
relationship in itself. I'm not wanting to minimize that relationship, but in understanding my relationship with God, I understand more about my relationship with myself.
Is it know
Okay.
thyself? Yes,
Yes.
yes.
So that is really important. And when I really get and understand who I am a teacher.
Hmm.
Because somebody is watching you, Larry. Somebody is paying attention to how you're moving through the world, how you're
Yes.
showing up. And not all the time is someone coming up asking questions like, what is this thing called man? What is this thing called
Right.
father? What is this thing called partner or husband? They're not asking those questions, but their eye gates and their ear gates are taking it all in. So
Right.
how are we modeling what it is to be a man?
Hmm.
Okay. And And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we don't know. We haven't had good models.
I
So we
got
don't
you.
know exactly how to follow that. And when it comes to having to deal with situations and challenges that we have in our life, we go off of what we learned. And while
Mm.
our parents and primary caretakers did the best they could with what they had, we didn't get all our needs met. We didn't get all our wants, our desires, our longings. They didn't happen. So while they did the best they could, because I too have done the best I could with the children in my life. And I know all of them are going to need therapy at some time because
Right.
I know I haven't met all their needs either. The point
Right.
being, though, is really being mindful
Right.
how,
Mindful.
how we
Mind.
can show up differently. You know, um,
Wow.
I was looking at
Define mindful right quick for people. What is mindful?
being present, mentally present with
Hmm.
what's going on in the now, in the moment. You
Okay.
know, how am I showing up right now? When I'm walking down the street and I see you coming up, do I take a moment and look up in your face and say, "Hey, bro, how you doing today?"
So keeps
Or do I
watching your
put my
feet.
head down and keep on walking?
Yeah.
You know, if I see a brother standing somewhere on the corner do I go over and anyway check in and say, "Hey, man, is everything cool? You need any help? Is there something going on?" Or do I drive on by or pass on by? When I
Right.
see issues that I see are challenging, do I become a bystander or do I participate? You see, there
Wow.
are things that in the moment that we look at, we have an opportunity to do different. It's just how do we do it?
Right.
You know, and how do we show up? And I think a lot of that's important because for the most part, we're all involved in some kind of community.
Right.
How are we showing up in that community? You know what I
Present.
mean? When I walk in a room, do I walk in the room and don't say anything, or do I walk in the room and greet people?
Right.
You know, do I walk in a room and expect somebody to greet me? How do you know?
Right.
I'm coming in. Why don't I acknowledge my space? You know, I come in and offer something. You know, well, how am I showing up? To
Mm.
my persona, does my presence, does my voice tone, does it invite or does it
Mm.
repel? You see,
Yeah.
and it's really interesting because so much I believe has to do with our communication with each other.
I got
How
you.
are we talking to each other? How are we connecting with each other? How are we listening to each other
Mm.
and being present that way? And that all involves mindfulness to me.
Thank you for that. I wanted our podcast audience to understand that because people use
Yes,
the term, but you broke it down. Thank you.
yes, yeah. It's being present, man. Yeah. And I tell you, one of the greatest things that I believe in the world today is our ability to listen.
Okay.
You know, to be able to hear another person's truth, another person's belief, another person's reality, another person's way of seeing the world. You know, you and I may see things differently. And that's
Right.
okay. It's okay.
Right.
It's not like I have to change you or you have to change me. Because as opposed to looking at the concept of agreement,
Mm-hmm.
what would it be to move to the concept of understanding?
Now that's different
Now,
because
what would
you.
that be? You see, if we
Yeah.
stop looking at, I got to change this person, well, that person don't know what they talk about. That ain't true. Well, it may not be true to you,
Right.
but
Right.
to
Right.
the
But
other
what
person, it may be their truth.
understanding? Because
So
we get
how do we
agreement.
respect that? And we
Right.
get to respect by understanding. How do we get to understanding? Through listening,
Now, is there
through
such thing as
curiosity.
wow? Is there such thing as active or passive listening, or is that a term we just created?
Well, I think there's both. I think there is active listening, and that's the one that I pursue. You
Okay.
see,
All
because active listening is intentional.
right. Mm.
Okay, it has to do with meaningfulness. It has to do with mindfulness. It has to do with presence.
Okay.
Okay, I'm not preparing to respond to you. I am listening to you.
Mm.
You see, think about it. Think about it. And for the most part, when we're talking with someone, we are busy preparing a response.
Yeah.
And we might hear some of what they're saying. We will hear some of it because it will trigger within us the need to respond, as opposed to listening totally to what
Mm.
that person is saying. And letting them know, Larry, letting them know that we're listening to them.
Right.
And how do we do that? How do we do that? It's just
Mm.
very simply repeating back what I heard you say, bro.
I love it. I love when you do that. I want to get better at something like that because you have a way of taking my words and just bringing them back that can connect the whole audience to this whole symphony. I would call this
Yeah,
orchestra.
yeah.
And thank you for that. Give me another part of the relationship. We went from know yourself first. What about when you have to connect with a child or a partner or a female? What type of ways the male needs to be
Well,
moving?
I will say this to a child, to a female, to another person. It all comes down with that ability to connect with them through communication and listening. Very
That's right.
simply, and I'll give you an example. Your son comes home and say, "Hey, Dad, I want to color my hair. I want to color my hair blue."
Right.
And immediately you look at, "Oh no, that ain't gonna happen in this house. Ain't gonna be no coming in this house no blue hair. That ain't gonna go down like that." And you say, what happens right there in that moment? In that
Right.
moment that your son, daughter comes through, whatever it is, want to get a piercing, for example, or something, and they say it to you, and immediately you
Hmm.
respond, "Oh no, that ain't gonna happen. It ain't going down." What happens there, Larry?
They shut
You
down.
immediately shut that conversation down.
Yes. Over. Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah.
So whatever the child may have said, or whatever your son or daughter was thinking, in that
Right.
moment got lost. What would it be though to say, "Oh, so you're thinking about coloring your hair blue? Hmm. Tell me more about that."
Right.
And
Right.
your child may say, "Well, Dad, everybody's doing this now. This is what's going on, and um, I want to." And you can say, "Oh, so that's what's going on. Everybody's doing it now." And what
Hmm.
is there more to that? Well, yeah, I want to connect. I want to be part of. Oh, so you're wanting to be part of that now. And so you
Right.
see, by coloring your hair blue, you want to connect with others. You can be part of that group and that kind of thing. Is that right? You see
Hmm.
where I'm going with
Yeah.
this?
I
What
love
is
it.
it to
I love
you?
it. I love it. You're going deeper.
You're getting more information. And by being open to receiving, what you're doing is you're creating a connection. You're bonding with your child in a way that allows them to feel safe to open up and share more.
That's it. That's right. To open up and share more.
Exactly. Because if I feel safe with you, I'm going to tell you, Dad, I'm tired of being different. I'm tired of seeing the group over there and I'm over here by myself. And I want to belong to some. I want to connect. And that gives you more information about your child. It lets that child feel safer to talk to you. Well, the
Wow.
same happens in a relationship with another person.
Right. Right.
If you can do the same thing, you create an invitation, if you will, to connect with me.
Hmm. That's what I think that's so important. And the two aspects that I want us to talk about today was conditioning, socialization, and relationship building from man to man. And
Yeah.
we always talk about the old school way was, man, I got to talk to you man to man. And that's what I want to do with you today is talk to you man to
Yeah.
man
Yeah.
on just some basic concepts and things that we take for granted,
Yeah.
but trying to put men in a position to have these conversations. And that's what this podcast is all about today. And just building on top of this because what you bring to the table has helped men so much from conflict management to resolution to being a better person.
Yeah.
And that's why I appreciate you and how and the things that you bring to the table. It brings a perspective out that I think all men, as well as anybody in the community, need to understand because the socialization, the conditioning of men has allowed us to be a certain way. And that's where the stereotypes come. That's where people shut down and talk. That's where the triggers pop up. But if we can go deeper, like you're saying,
Yes.
listening,
Yeah.
being mindful, being present, and coming with an understanding heart, it will go a long way in on getting a better understanding of what men are going through, what a man is experiencing, and help to build a better community and better relationships.
Yeah. You're spot on right there. Just spot on, Larry. And the thing I want to say, and I know probably moving towards closure here, is that we have to do some work to get around the fear of homophobia.
Hmm.
Okay, we
Yeah.
have to know that as men we can love each other, and it's okay.
Okay. Right.
You
Right.
know, I can see you on the street. I can come up to you and give you a hug, brother,
Right. Right.
and know it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm not less than a man by giving you a hug.
Right.
I'm not talking about one of them hugs where I'm patting you on the back and beating you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
looking
Yeah.
for no burp or nothing. I just
Long
want to say,
embrace. So I got you.
what does
I
it
understand.
mean? Yeah, what does it mean for us to allow ourselves to express
Mm.
our feelings to another man?
Wow.
And I know we need more time for that,
Yeah.
but those
Yeah.
are things to think about, man, because there's so much for us to learn.
That's
And
why I
God
wanted.
has it for us
I
to
don't want
move
to give. That's why I'm gonna have you back for part two. I don't want to give them everything. Now this is the smorgasbord. We got. I want them to get a taste of what you about, and what we gonna go on, because we gonna be doing more. Go into what we call expository, and go deeper. But I wanted people to really get an understanding and build on the surface, and then build from the root, and then we're gonna build up and make a difference. And give us one parting affirmation that we can give to send out to our men right now, especially what we're dealing with the first 3 months of the year. A lot of uncertainty, a lot of things you have to decide. Resolutions been made, promises been made, some been broken. What would you give us to keep us going?
a thought that comes to mind that I think would be helpful is that when you experience a moment that brings about any degree of uncertainty to you, take a pause, take a breath,
Mm,
process that moment for the moment. Just process it for a moment and ask yourself, what is in this moment for me to learn?
mm.
Why am I having this experience? What is there that life is presenting me with right now to grow? Begin
Wow.
to see moments of challenge, moments of uncertainty as opportunities to grow because
Wow.
God has it for us to be so much more than who we are, Larry.
That's right. And that's the big part. More than who we are. And we can't, we got to see through, we got to see that, because we'll live right now in the now and in the past, but you don't see the bigger picture on
Right.
you're here for a reason. It's something God wants you to do.
You're
Oh,
right. And so many of us live our life based on the past and and allow that past to inform the present,
right.
which means we miss out on the gift.
Yes. Well, I'm gonna close it at that point, Suleiman. I call him Dr. Suleiman, and what he's doing, and I just
Thank you,
appreciate
brother.
you so much. Tell people how they can connect with you if they need to go further.
Well, very simply, I do have an email address, and it's peaceandlove at mindspring.com. Or I have a number, and I don't mind being receiving calls, which is 404-202-1487. I don't have that written down anywhere, but if
That's all
you,
right. We got you, man. We on this podcast. They'll pick it up. They're gonna replay it. I want
all
them to
right,
share it to other men and women
yeah,
and people who
don't
want to
hesitate
see.
to reach out, man.
No, I think
Yeah,
you all real life. You heard some great nuggets, some great inspiration, some practical applications on where you are. Please tune in to part two. We're gonna do a couples dialogue with the Nuriddins coming up soon. I want you to be a part of that, and so I thank you, good brother.
and thank
Have be safe, stay strong, and I can't wait to do part two on couples, and we talk man to man,
yes, sir.
real life
All
with
right,
Dr. T and Commissioner Johnson. Stay strong, everybody. Bye
all right.
bye.
Peace and love, everyone. Thank you so much. Peace.